Claire Riordan, and my family first immigrated to the United States in the mid-1800s from East Germany.
你好，的以前我叫季东兴，我 Issabella Huser, and I was adopted from Guangdong province in China in 2003.
Hola, mi nombre es Daniela Perezchica-Trancoso, and I am first generation Mexican American.
Sat Sri Akal ji, mera naam Neena Chana hai, and my mother is an Indian immigrant who went through the naturalization process in 1999 to become a U.S. citizen. And on behalf of Tahoma High School, our advisor Gretchen Wolfing, and the state of Washington, we thank you for judging us today.
Well, thank you for being here. I will go ahead and read the first question. Give you time for your opening statement. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King said, "Never in the history of this nation have so many people been arrested for the cause of freedom and human dignity." What lessons can be learned from the Children's March in Birmingham, Alabama? What is civic engagement, and what is the significance in American history? What is the responsibility, if any, do schools have to promote civic education? You may begin.
For the dogs are fierce and wild.
And clubs and hoses, guns and jails.
Aren't good.
Ballad of Birmingham by Dudley Randall.
The lessons to be learned from the Children's March in Birmingham is the significance of civil disobedience, as well as the nature of youth activism. Despite the extreme force by the government, these children continue to protest as a means to secure segregation of their lives.
This spirit of defiance is still alive, as the Children's March taught the youth of today that without the pressure for change, progress is impossible to achieve. In 2017, the federal government approved the Dakota Access Pipeline, a project that threatened the water supply along the Missouri River.
This threat became reality when the pipeline leaked 5 times in 2017 alone, spilling hundreds of gallons of oil onto the territories of vulnerable populations. In response, a youth group from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, Respect Our Water, raised their concerns in the form of stand-up protests and eventually a litigation war, slowing the project's completion.
Without these protests, the government would have been able to pursue its own interests of economic growth without facing tangible consequences. The actions of passionate young people prove that civil disobedience is integral to representative democracy, regardless of age or experience.
Civic engagement can be defined as working to make a difference in the civic life of a community, both politically and non-politically. In American history, civil disobedience has also played a critical role in lasting political change with numerous contributions from young people.
In 1899, newspaper boys as young as 8 in New York City went on strike, protesting against the rise in the price of the newspapers that made up their living. Over 5,000 newsboys participated, attending rallies and disrupting traffic for 2 weeks. This strike inspired others across the country, notably Montana in 1914 and Kentucky in the 1920s, becoming a stepping stone for the introduction of urban child welfare practices.
Also sparked by young people was the fight for Native American rights during the Civil Rights era. The occupation of Alcatraz Island in 1969 was an attempt by Native American youths from various tribes to gain back surplus federal land, which the violated Treaty of Fort Laramie of 1868 ruled was theirs.
This was also a stepping stone towards legislation that improved the well-being of Native Americans, like the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act of 1975. Action by citizens has become crucial to creating the opportunity for lasting political and social change in America.
Schools have the ability to act as laboratories of change and social progress, and thus should be responsible for fostering a civically engaged generation by teaching students about the importance of participation.
Recognizing this fact, Massachusetts became the first state to require each middle and high school to include at least one student-led civics project in 2018, with the goal of positively shaping the basis of American democracy.
As an extension, schools can provide the means for students who wish to civically engage to do so. For example, in response to the 2018 March for Our Lives, the Seattle School District in Washington State passed Resolution 31803, urging Seattle Public Schools to encourage any student-planned march.
Not only were these schools able to teach their students about the logistics of civic engagement, but the protests themselves led to tangible change in gun legislation in the state of Washington. By empowering students to be activists, positive change led by young people can continue to shape the United States.
Scott, you're muted.
Thank you. I try to put myself on mute so I don't interrupt. So thanks, Dan. So one of the questions that we have for you, is there any issue or movement that you would risk your physical harm or subject yourself to arrest for today?
I would gladly put myself on the front lines for our current climate crisis. In the past, I have participated in the climate strike that occurred a few months back. And in my state, I have participated in a organization called Conservation Northwest, where we work to rejuvenate the lands of the Pac Northwest.
I would personally risk for the movement of tighter gun restrictions and gun laws. As a matter of fact, in 2018, after the shooting in Parkland, Florida, I hosted our school's walkout, and that was a challenge because I had to encourage students to civically disobey their school by leaving class in the middle of the day to protest the situation that was currently going on.
I would advocate for the Equal Rights Amendment, which was proposed to Congress in 1972, which would guarantee equal legal rights to all U.S. citizens regardless of sex. On February 13th, the House of Representatives voted to eliminate the deadline on this, and so hopefully I will be able to vote on this in the future when my state ratifies this.
I would also advocate for the current women's movement, additionally advocating for the Equal Rights Amendment. And this March, I participated in Seattle's Women's March.
Thank you.
So I'd like to ask about where the parents are in all this. Do you believe that the parents are exploiting the kids in the march, or were they acting with civic virtue aspects as well by allowing their children to participate?
Well, at the time of the march, it was very difficult for adults to participate since they needed to go to work and provide for their families. Therefore, children were put to the front lines to participate in this march. And in doing so, I would argue that by having children participate, it created a stronger impact worldwide.
Additionally, we can see that many of these children actually participated without the permission of their parents because they took it upon themselves to civically engage and use their voices to solve the issues of segregation that they were facing. And as my colleague Neena mentioned, the impact of the children actually had a larger impact than adults would have because of the violence that they faced. And this violence was against children.
Adding on to my colleague Claire, these children were participating in the philosophy presented by Alexis de Tocqueville, which enlightens self-interest, sacrificing their own personal interests or their personal safety for the benefit of their community.
All right, thank you. I would like to ask, are the protesters out in rallies against the governor's stay-at-home orders, are they engaging in appropriate or inappropriate civic engagement?
I would argue that they are engaging in inappropriate civic engagement. I think that we can specifically look at the instance in Michigan in which protesters were creating extreme blockades on the streets, and essentially what was happening was that they were blocking the entrances to hospital, and it was the only hospital in that city, in the capital city, that could handle COVID patients, and was the only hospital that was currently treating COVID patients. And so in this instance, civil disobedience is only justified in instances in which the rights of other people are not being threatened. We can execute our First Amendment right to assemble as long as we're not threatening the lives of other people or harming other people.
In addition to my colleague, As stated in the court case Brandenburg v. Ohio, which established the clear and present danger test, I would argue that the protesters who are protesting the stay-at-home orders are posing a clear and present danger to their public, and thus harming the public health and safety of the people surrounding them.
I would actually like to disagree with my colleagues and state that these protesters, although I do not personally agree with them, are participating in appropriate civic engagement, that being a form of civil disobedience. Henry David Thoreau, in his essay on the duty of civil disobedience, written in 1848, states that citizens are to engage in civil disobedience, citizens must refuse to obey certain laws or demands given by the government. And because the government is currently violating the First Amendment right to assemble, these protesters are engaging in appropriate civil disobedience.
I would also like to add that these protesters have an alternative way to give their voice without posing a danger by being in close contact with people. We can see in Hong Kong, people have actually continued to protest on social media or various video game apps, like one being Animal Crossing.
Thank you. Scott or Carl?
Yeah, so, one of the questions that I have is if the scientists aren't necessarily clear as to what is dangerous and what is not. Oh, thank you, Saved by the bell. So nicely done. You can tell we're still getting adjusted to this format, but you handled it beautifully. So nicely done. I give you some comments. I particularly appreciated your examples and your citations with respect to backing up what you're saying. Whenever you've been through kind of 3 or 4 rounds of judges and you start hearing different things, that's a good sign. And I particularly appreciated in terms of your references to the Newsboys and the 1899 issue, because that's an interesting dynamic to me, and I really, quite frankly, struggle with the balance between what parents should be doing to protect these kids and what the kids were doing. So nicely done. I appreciate your comments and your ideas.
I also enjoyed your presentation. I thought your 4-minute presentation was thorough and established a clear understanding of the import of the Children's March. I also enjoyed your answers to the tough cross-examination questions. It's hard issues like the COVID-19 pandemic that really tests our Constitution. And what I'm appreciative is that we have constitutional scholars such as yourself who understand that the Constitution can be used to solve our issues and to allow people of different views and different ideas to protest and tell the government what they think. Good job. Thank you.